Nothing's for sure, that's for sure. And I think right now in these times, this is exactly what a lot of people are feeling right now. And I actually had this really awesome conversation with someone today about how she was feeling so uncertain about everything that's coming up in life, and about everything that's going on and what to do. And I just kind of reminded her that actually everything in life is always uncertain. And when you look at it that way, that the only thing that we can really ever be sure of is our own thoughts and our own actions. And for me, that's actually a thought that makes me feel better, because I feel like I can be in control of my thoughts and of my actions, and everything else, it is what it is. And I think that is through a lot of mindfulness practice, but nothing's for sure, that's for sure. So I love that sentiment, and just to keep that with us today, in that we can be sure of one thing, and that is nothing is for sure. And so today, the topic that I had planned for today's second video on using mindfulness to create success for your business and your life is about why most entrepreneurs are working harder by unknowingly working against their own selves, and how you can break that cycle to work smarter, not harder. And I am still super keen on actually working with that today. But I also want to really bring that into how we can use these techniques and methods in our day-to-day life as well, and how important these really are in times such as this. Being able to create resiliency and flexibility, and to be able to not get too caught up in everything that's going around, and how we can keep our minds calm in amidst all of this stuff that's going all around us. Because for me, that is the biggest gift that mindfulness has been able to give me, is that I am able to remain calm, remain collective, logical, problem solving, instead of kind of freaking out and getting very emotional and even hysterical in times like these, because that is totally a possibility and a reality for so many people. And so mindfulness has been such a gift in allowing me to stay calm, stay centered, and really look at the possibilities that are available instead of this fear and panic and scarcity. So that's kind of where we're going today. So it will still absolutely touch on why this is important in your business. And we're going to talk about how this kind of overflows into the rest of our lives. And so in last week's video, we touched on the fight or flight system. And the fight or flight system is just so important in learning about how we can monitor our thoughts, and how we can really stay sort of ahead of that curve. And so again, you'll see here there is the amygdala, which is that red center. And Dr. Dan Siegel, he is brilliant, and he has this hand model of the brain. And so basically he'll show you that this is your brain stem, and that your amygdala is your thumb. And then, oh, I'm mirrored. I don't know what, okay. So your amygdala is your thumb, and then this comes down, and that's your prefrontal cortex. And you can actually put this sort of behind here, and you'll see that your prefrontal cortex comes in just behind your forehead. Okay, and so what happens when we feel stress or anxiety is normally we're like this. The amygdala, so we get a sensory acuity come up through our brainstem. It alerts our amygdala, perhaps something's wrong, and it actually flips our lid. It takes all of the energy and it brings the prefrontal cortex offline. And so you'll often hear that saying, flip your lid. And I love this from Dan Siegel, is that is really kind of what's happening. Your prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for focus, attention, logic, problem solving, predicting the consequences of our actions. But essentially logic, problem solving. And this is what the prefrontal cortex is mainly responsible for. And so our brain actually takes about 20% of the energy that goes into our entire body. So this little thing up here takes about 20% of our energy, and that's at rest. So when we are triggered into a fight, flight, or freeze situation where we feel like our life has been threatened in some way, we are under attack, the first thing that the brain does is it limits the energy flow to other areas of the brain because it's like, I got to keep you alive. So the first part that it takes energy away from is the prefrontal cortex. And that's because when we are in a situation of life or death, the rest of the brain is wildly more important because the rest of the brain is what actually keeps our body functions going and all of that. So that part needs more energy. And so I'm telling you this specifically because our thoughts, our brain cannot tell the difference between what we are imagining and what we are thinking and what's actually happening in real life. So especially in times like this, where we start to have all these wild imaginations of what could happen, what might happen, and you become stuck in these fears and worries and anxieties, we are actually triggering the response of the amygdala. It is firing off all of its energy. It's shutting down our prefrontal cortex. And so it happens in times such as this, absolutely. But it also, going back to your business and working against yourself, when you are saying things in your business, such as, oh, that didn't go the way that I wanted it. I didn't do well on that launch. I didn't sell to as many people as I wanted. Whatever it is that you're going through, and you start to berate yourself, you start to feel shame, you start to feel sadness, you feel anger at yourself, you are actually setting off this trigger of the fight, flight, or freeze. You're activating the amygdala and you're shutting down the problem solving, the logic, the focus, and the attention that you actually need to use in order to get through the situation, to do better in your business, to get through whatever is happening. Like right now, I know it's a joke right now about people buying all the toilet paper. However, it's important to realize that, people aren't, when they're triggered into this fight or flight, which can happen when you're sitting in front of the news and you're hearing about these viruses, we're not necessarily thinking super logically. Right? This panic buying, all this stuff going out and doing that, a lot of that is induced by this particular thing, the thoughts in our head, the feelings that we have, we're feeling stressed out, anxious, and it's triggering the fight or flight. So that's why it's so wildly important that through mindfulness and meditation, we can actually learn to shrink the amygdala, like actually shrink it, and increase our prefrontal cortex. So that's just like going to the gym and you want to build muscle and decrease fat. You want to build the prefrontal cortex and you want to decrease the size of the amygdala. And what does this allow? This allows for us to be able to respond better instead of reacting. This allows us to, sorry, I got a little tickle. This allows us to become more logical, have more attention, have more focus on the regular. And so this is what mindfulness training is so beneficial for. And as I said in video 1, there's a difference between living in a state of mindfulness and doing meditation and mindfulness exercises to get you to that state of mindfulness. So there are two different things. But what you can do by actually training this part of your brain is you shrink the amygdala, grow the prefrontal cortex, and you become more logical. You have higher states of focus, attention, creativity, logic, and problem solving. So it's legit like going to the gym, but you're working out your brain functionality instead of your body per se. And the cool thing about that too is that a side effect, so to speak, of doing all of this is that you decrease anxiety, stress, worry, sadness, anger. All of that starts to go down because your amygdala isn't so triggered anymore. And your prefrontal cortex gets to come online, and you can logic and reason and say, oh, maybe I don't need to be so worried about this. And we're going to get into in a moment some of the most common mind traps that our minds go into. So that brings me to this. Our thoughts are not facts. And so we can have a thought very quickly. Our thought has, as I said in the last video, we have approximately 60,000 thoughts per day. Okay. 95% of those are repetitive and 85% of those are negative. Right? So our thoughts are just coming into our brain super fast. And so through mindfulness training, we can actually learn to slow down the input of those thoughts. And instead of being triggered by them in our amygdala, we can actually allow ourselves to take that time, take that pause, think of them more logically, and work through them that way. So we don't get triggered as much by anger, sadness, anxiety, worry, or any of those things. So that is an amazing side effect. But our thoughts are not facts is such an important piece to remember, that even though we're thinking something, it's not always true, whatever it is that you're thinking. So there's a saying that says, I have spent most of my life worrying about things that have never happened. And that's Mark Twain. And this is just so true. I mean, I was in the depths of wild, debilitating anxiety for like a year. And all I kept thinking was, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. Obviously, I didn't die. So I spent about a year totally gripped in fear that I was going to die. And there was really no reason to believe that, other than this was triggered by an emotional or a traumatic event in my life where I actually thought I was almost going to die. And then after that, I couldn't get this thought out of my head, right? So we spend so much of our lives worrying about things that have never happened, or thinking about things that are in our past that, oh, I wish I could have done that differently, or I wish this. And there's really nothing we could do now because that's already happened, right? So we spend so much of our time and in our mind thinking about these things. And especially in these times, this just becomes so prominent to me, especially because when we say negative things to ourselves as well, so we have the worries about what could go on in the world. But there's also things that we say to ourselves on a regular basis. Like, let's just say, oh, you're so stupid and ugly and nobody likes you, right? If you look at yourself in the mirror and that's what you say, your body takes it as an attack. And so again, going back to that fight or flight, it triggers that. It doesn't understand that you are the attacker, and it still comes into this fight or flight. So being able to take back the control over the thoughts that we have is such a key part to success in all areas of our life. And especially right now, where a lot of us are feeling like we've lost control over what we're doing in our lives and what's happening outside there in the world, it's so important that we, realize that maintaining a positive mindset and keeping positive thoughts within our mind is so important right now. And there's a phrase from Eckhart Tolle. He's the author of The Power of Now. And if you don't know who this man is, then I encourage you to go find out who this man is and read and watch all the things. But I'm totally paraphrasing here. I've read his book like 15 times, so I feel like this is what he said, but I might be changing the words a bit. When we are faced with a negative life situation, we have two options. One, change it, if we can change it. And two, if we cannot change it, we must accept it as if we'd chosen it. And this, when I speak about this, I frequently get met with this pushback of, like, let's take what's happening right now at the coronavirus. I didn't choose this. I don't want to accept it. Yeah, cool. I didn't choose it. I don't think anybody here chose it. However, the more we push back against it, the more we try to resist it, the more we allow it to cause us anger, we're actually creating more suffering. And so there is a saying that suffering equals pain times resistance. that as humans, a human life will have pain. There's no getting around that. That is what it is. We have pain. People die, things happen. Human life has pain. But where suffering is optional, and suffering comes in when we resist that pain. When we say, I didn't choose this, I don't want this, I don't deserve this, why did this happen to me? And the more and more and more we resist what is happening, the more and more we create this bubble of suffering around us. And so again, this comes back to the importance of being able to see our thoughts, watch our thoughts, and then choose which ones are helping us and which ones are working against us. And so on that note, I wanted to take you through some of the most common mind traps. And I'm really quite disappointed right now because I can't see the chat. So I'm going to try to find this. I don't know if this is going to work. I'm going to try to find the chat on my other device, which I can't. Okay. So scrap that. So we're going to go through the mind traps. And if you have something to say, please type it in the comments. I will get to them once we're finished here. I'm so sorry that I can't get to them right now. But so the mind traps, and I really wanted this to be interactive, but we're going to work with what we got. So the first one is catastrophizing. And catastrophizing, I just want you to think about that for a moment, catastrophizing. And what does that mean? And catastrophizing really is, and if you want, put it in the comments below. What do you think catastrophizing means? I'd love to get a conversation going around all of this. And catastrophizing is basically making something really wildly bad, right? Catastrophizing. Like, this reminds me of like 15 years ago almost, when I was in my apartment in this like condo, and my family came over, and they brought a shrimp ring, and it was frozen. And so I put the shrimp ring in I had a very small condo. It was a small kitchen, and it was packed with my family. So I put the shrimp ring in my bathroom, and I put it in the sink, and I was running the water. And then all of a sudden I see just like water running out from the bathroom door, and I started freaking out. I was like, oh my God. So the water had run down, it got all over my toilet paper, and I was like, oh my God, the toilet paper is ruined, and this is ruined. And I like completely lost my mind, when in actual fact, nothing had happened. So that, that would be an example of catastrophizing. And I would love to know, you know, when is a time that you can recall that you catastrophized something, where you made, what's that saying, a mountain out of a molehill? I think that's what we could call catastrophizing. You turn it into basically the world's worst possible event, when, you know, really it's not nearly as big as, you know, you let your mind carry it away to be. And then the next one is exaggerating the negative. And exaggerating the negative can be seen as somewhat similar to catastrophizing, but it's a little bit different. So I'd love for you to post in the comments what you think exaggerating the negative is. And for me, it's really like, I find planes. Planes are like the #1 place where I see people exaggerating the negative. You know, you are flying from one end of the country to the other end of the country in just a matter of a couple of hours, and people are like, oh my God, it was the worst flight ever. First, I had to wait 10 minutes to board, and then I had to wait 30 minutes on the tarmac, and then I flew home, right? So this idea that these little things are so much bigger, and so how we exaggerate the negative. Sure, a 10-minute wait wasn't in your plan, but then how we exaggerate those so much more than needed. So write in the comments if you can think of something that you exaggerated the negative on recently. And then that brings us to number 3, mind reading. And this one is a huge one. I just love spotting this in people. And I have worked a lot with this through my mindfulness training, but I've also recently done neurolinguistic programming, and they use mind reading a lot in there as well, or finding the mind reading. And so that's like saying, like, I go, oh, and you're like, why are you so mad at me? Right? Or I'm like, you go to offer me dinner and I say, oh, thanks, I'm not hungry. And you're like, what, you don't like my cooking? Right? So you're putting words in somebody else's mind or out of their mouth that they've never said, and you have no way of knowing if that's something that they believe or don't believe. So that would be mind reading. And if you're sitting at home being like, I don't do that ever, check yourself. And I would actually love to hear about a time that you have mind read in the past. Let me know what that looks like, because we all do it. And then number 4 would be the shoulds. And I love this saying, quit shoulding all over me. I said shoulding. That quit shoulding all over me is that, oh, you should do this, you should do that. It would be better if you did this, right? Who are you to say should? But this is for other people, but this is also for yourself. Oh, I should have done that. I should have done this. And it's a very quick way to go down the rabbit hole of negative self-talk about what you should have done, could have done, would have done, when in actual fact, it's already done. And so none of this really matters. So those are the shoulds. Let me know when you should on someone, or if you're unclear on any of these two. I know I can't respond right now, which is driving me insane. But do write those in the comments and I will get back to you. Blaming, that is a huge one. So blaming others. So this really comes down to blaming others. Sure, you can blame others, but you can also blame life, circumstances. You can blame what happened when you were 5. You can blame all these things on who you are and where you're at in your life right now. How many times have you heard somebody say that? Well, it's not my fault that I never finished college. My mom, when I was 5, said blah, blah, blah. Or, it's not my fault that I can't keep a job because my parents never showed me what it was like to, hold down a job and be responsible. So there's all of those things, right? You're blaming other things, or, I would be more successful in my business. I would take bigger risks if this, and this, when really it's up to us to create our own reality. It's up to us to create the life that we want. And when we are blaming outside factors for anything in our life, we are not taking 100% responsibility. And the reason that that scares me so much is because that means that I have 0% responsibility to fix it either, to change it, to make my life better. So when I can take 100% responsibility for everything that's happened to me in my life up to this point, then that means I have 100% responsibility and ability to completely change everything moving forward. And that means that my life, the possibilities in my life become limitless. And that to me is very, very, very exciting. So even when things happen, like I get caught in traffic and I'm going to be late, well, how am I responsible for this? How am I at cause for this? And how can I create something new and a new possibility out of this situation? And this is something that we really dive a lot deeper into in my online membership program, is being at cause. And actually all of these mind traps, we get a lot deeper into that inside the program. And then the last one here is taking things personally. And this is kind of like mind reading, but I really love to put this on the end because so many people take things personally. And I actually had a great conversation with a friend the other day, who got very upset with a word that I had used. The word was revolting. I said something that this person had said was revolting. And that triggered something inside of them, and they got very upset. How could you say I'm revolting? You know, you don't like me anymore, this and that. And I was like, whoa, 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 you're not revolting. I still like you. It's just that I find that particular statement revolting, right? So it's very, very easy for people to take what we say personally. And it's really important to remember that everything that we see, no two people's reality is the same, right? There's that saying that's like there's 3 sides to every story or something. My story, his story, and then the truth, what actually happened. And what actually happened is usually so much simpler than what either one of those people are saying happened, right? So I could say, you know, I threw the pizza on the floor. I threw pizza on the floor. That person's like, oh my gosh, what a selfish person, doesn't even care, throwing pizza on the floor. I'm like, I threw the pizza on the floor because there was poison on it. I don't know. You don't know, right? So how we perceive things are a direct relation to what's going on in our own mind, what we believe to be happening, and everything that's happened to us up until this point. So that's really cool and really fun. And I would love to dive deeper in that. And I actually might bring some of this into video 3. But anyways, we do dive super deep into all of this and how we can become more at cause for our life. And actually the book that I'm writing right now is called Wake Up to What You Choose. And it's really about how we are responsible for our life, and that every day we wake up to the choices that we made the day before. And every moment we are responsible for the choices we made the moment before. So if we react really negatively, angry, we say something, the next moment we are now living in the reality of those actions. And so love this topic. And that's, again, what we'll dive a lot deeper to in my membership program. And one thing that I'm just looking at my notes here, and one thing I didn't dive into is the idea of self-doubt. And I know for a lot of people in the world, self-doubt is a massive thing. And so whether you are an entrepreneur or a business owner, or whether you want to be, or whether you just want to do anything in your life, whether it's you want to learn how to paint, whether it's you want to go traveling, whether it's, I don't know what it is, but the thing that usually stops us is fear or self-doubt. And self-doubt, something to remember, is basically going back to the exaggerating the negative. And self-doubt is essentially exaggerating the possible future negative. So you're exaggerating the negative on something that hasn't even happened yet, and you have really no reason to believe could happen, but yet you're allowing these things to hold you back in your business and in life. And I know that this happens in business all the time. People are like, well, I would love to do this, but maybe I'm not good enough, or blah, blah, blah. People do it in dating. I would love to go out dating, but I don't think that I'm this, or I don't think I'm that. And so where are you allowing this self-doubt, which is exaggerating the future possible, hasn't happened yet, negative? Where are you allowing that to hold you back? That for me is just something when I had that realization one day going through these mind traps, that self-doubt was like this entirely made up construct. I was like, wow, so much stuff I haven't done based on self-doubt. So keep that in mind. And then something that I'm not going to dive into massively today, because this takes a lot of time and I do want this to be a two-way conversation, is the 7 attitudes of mindfulness. And this is something I go much deeper in the online membership program that I do offer, is the 7 attitudes of mindfulness. And basically, these are the antidotes for the mind traps that we just went over. And so when you find yourself in one of these mind traps, it's ideal to look at these 7 attitudes of mindfulness and say, okay, what can I use as the antidote or the healing to let go of this mind trap, let go of this catastrophizing, this mind. I know